The ancient Egyptians are widely regarded as having one of the greatest and most advanced civilizations of all time. They left behind a vast legacy of artistic and architectural achievements that continue to captivate the world with their magnificence and beauty. However, the ancient Egyptians were also known for a number of strange practices. Regardless of how strange these things may seem to us today, the ancient Egyptians considered them to be essential to life and a fundamental part of their beliefs and civilization, whether as sacred rituals or because they had been passed down through generations. Welcome to Random Channel. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications to receive regular updates. I hope you enjoy the video. The afterlife was of great importance to the ancient Egyptians. They believed that burial and its accompanying rituals were essential to ensure the deceased's smooth transition to the afterlife and guarantee their eternal life and comfort. They believed that failing to bury the dead correctly would bring curses upon the living, as the dead were thought to experience joy, sadness, and anger even after death. Furthermore, they believed that the dead had the power to bless or curse the living if they were not buried properly. Consequently, they developed a sophisticated set of burial practices. The wealthy, for example, buried their loved ones in stone tombs, while the pyramids were reserved for the pharaohs. They used mummification to preserve the bodies of the deceased. This process involved removing the internal organs, wrapping the body in linen, and placing it in a wooden or stone coffin. The entire process took approximately 70 days, with the time spent on mummification depending on the wealth of the deceased. The deceased was buried with a large number of valuables in the tomb, as well as funerary texts and ushabti figurines. The ancient Egyptians believed that these would serve the dead in the afterlife. Among the ancient Egyptian royal family, it was common practice to arrange almost all marriages within the family. Consanguineous marriage was practiced throughout every dynasty, with pharaohs often marrying their sisters. According to legend, the reason for this unusual practice was the belief that Osiris, the ancient Egyptian god of resurrection and judgment, had married his sister in order to preserve the purity of the bloodline. These practices, of course, led to physical deformities and genetic disorders in newborns. One of the most famous examples is King Tutankhamun, who was the son of a brother and sister. He ascended to the throne of Egypt at the age of 9 and ruled for only 10 years before dying in 1323 BC at the age of 19. DNA tests conducted on his mummy later revealed that he suffered from several diseases and disorders, including a deformed foot resulting from a bone disease that forced him to walk with a cane and a spinal condition. He had a curved leg and suffered from a crack or fissure on the top of his foot. He also suffered from persistent severe infections and a weakened immune system. It is important to note that he was only 19 years old. This is a clear example of the dangers of practices aimed at preserving blood purity within the royal family. Some sculptures and murals depict ancient Egyptians with short black hair or elegant braids, as seen on Queen Cleopatra. However, most men and women were actually bald. While some might think this was a common practice or a new fashion trend, it was actually a method they used to combat diseases resulting from poor hygiene, such as head lice. Although there were some treatments for lice at the time, they were ineffective or not worth the effort and risk. It was safer for them to shave their heads completely. Men and women of lower rank or status in society often had only one braid of hair, while others wore wigs. These wigs weren't necessarily for aesthetic purposes, but rather served a practical function of protecting the wearer from the intense sun in that part of the world. The ancient Egyptians were renowned for their ingenuity in many areas of life. One of the most remarkable aspects of their culture was their ability to provide employment for those who might be considered marginalized today. Rather than ridiculing or eliminating people with conditions such as dwarfism or gigantism, for example, they embraced these differences, employing them as goldsmiths to safeguard the gold. This practice not only created more job opportunities for this disadvantaged group in a society that valued physical labor and the strength of its workers, but also safeguarded the owners of the gold. These individuals found it extremely difficult to blend into the crowd without being easily identified and discovered. While this practice may seem somewhat racist at first, upon reflection, It is clear that this civilization offered them the opportunity to work in one of the most important industries, while simultaneously elevating their status through their expertise and the respect they commanded. They were blessed with bodies that allowed them to attain these positions, and they were treated very differently from other groups. Their image among the masses and in the eyes of the people transformed from that of outcasts to that of a high-class distinguished group. The numerous benefits of honey and its ability to aid the body's healing process are undeniable. The ancient Egyptians were convinced of honey's healing properties and its wide range of uses in various forms and methods. It became an integral part of some of the most unusual practices of their time. Despite the well-known legend about Pharaoh Pepi II, famously known as the King of the Flies, who ruled Egypt during the 6th dynasty and used honey to keep flies away by covering 2 naked slaves in honey and placing them next to him, this practice was not the only strange thing related to the ancient Egyptians' use of honey. They used honey for various purposes, including as an anti-inflammatory for patients after surgery and as an ointment for skin diseases. They also used honey as eye drops to treat cases of conjunctivitis or inflammation of the inner eyelids. They also used honey as a contraceptive, mixing it with elephant dung. While honey is beneficial, this last method is not. In ancient times, polygamy and having many children were common, particularly among royalty. One of the most prominent examples of this is the family of Ramses II, also known as Ramses the Great, one of the most famous pharaohs of all time. Considered one of the most powerful pharaohs in ancient Egyptian history, Ramses II's influence extended beyond his policies, military campaigns and construction projects to encompass the genetic makeup of Egypt's future. It is said that Ramses had at least 8 wives and fathered over 100 children. Although he outlived most of his descendants, this enormous number of children undoubtedly ensured that his legacy would be passed down through the generations. The ancient Egyptians were accustomed to using laxatives and bowel-soothing medications. They took these 3 times a month as a form of disease prevention or detoxification, and sometimes to try to combat obesity. The Greek historian Herodotus wrote about how strictly the ancient Egyptians adhered to this type of preventive practice. On the days they took these laxatives, which were usually made from a mixture of castor oil, they would typically spend the entire day on the toilet. In critical cases, these laxatives were administered under the supervision of a specialist physician. Some ancient Egyptian builders used to mark the rocks with their own special signs. In 2011, an archaeological sign was discovered inside a secret chamber in the Great Pyramid of Giza. This sign had gone unnoticed for 4,500 years until it was spotted and photographed by a flexible camera, small enough to fit through a hole in a stone doorway at the end of a narrow passage. The camera captured a red hieroglyphic sign, as well as lines carved into the stone by the builders. Later studies revealed that this type of writing often represents the work team that built the chamber, like a signature. Sometimes, they serve as directions or indicate the beginning or end of a block or group of stones. Such signs frequently appear in concealed locations that are difficult to access. The ancient Egyptians had a special relationship with cats due to their connection with the famous cat-headed goddess Bastet. She symbolized cats, the homeland and fertility, and was considered the protector of pregnant women. Cats were sacred to Bastet and it was forbidden to harm them. If a family lost a cat, they would enter a period of mourning. This included shaving off all their eyebrows, and the mourning period would continue until they grew back. Meanwhile, the cat would be mummified and buried in a ceremony far grander than that of the average ancient Egyptian. The deceased cat was buried with all its cherished possessions from life, such as milk and toys, to ensure they would accompany it in the afterlife. Due to their sacred status, it was illegal to trade or export cats. The king could order his soldiers to pursue smugglers and recover the cats. Egypt is once again the origin of all domesticated cat breeds, and all such breeds currently trace back to cats that existed in Egypt during that period. The ancient Egyptians used pillows made from wood, ivory or stone, which seem like unusual materials for providing any kind of comfort. For the ancient Egyptians, this type of pillow was more of a headrest than a modern-style pillow. Its purpose was to elevate the head while lying down, helping the sleeper to maintain blood circulation and thus stay active and energetic. This elevated headrest also protected the sleeper from insects and pests that could easily reach their head. Furthermore, the ancient Egyptians believed that these pillows protected them from evil spirits, and therefore decorated them with images of their gods. Their variety of shapes and carving styles made them appear more like works of art than simple pillows or headrests. That's all for today. Thank you to everyone who made it this far. I appreciate all of you, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Before you leave, please press the like button so we know how many of you made it to the end. See you in the next episode.